Alright, somebody asked me about this, so here's an update. Since my last video, there's been a major change. Back then, we expected Hive's CFO Lee Kyung-joon to testify, according to the court documents being submitted. But just days ago, Hive filed new documents and switched their witness. Now, it wouldn't be the CFO on the stand. Instead, it will be their chief legal officer, CLO, named Jung Jin-soo. And that shift kind of completely changes how this trial is shaping up. And it's important to understand why. Because instead of putting finance at the center of the case, Hive is now emphasizing governance and compliance and corporate credibility. And that change could alter how the court views Min Hee-jin's actions at ADOR. Okay, so let's talk about this. As I just said in our last update, the expectation was that Hive's CFO Lee Kyung-joon would take the stand, and Lee Kyung-joon was the architect of Hive's financial control system. And he had actually already testified in the SM Entertainment stock manipulation case. And his presence in court would have emphasized Hive's claim that Min Hee-jin's actions disrupted the financial and structural stability of ADOR and the wider Hive group. But according to filings submitted on September 4th and 5th, that plan has changed. Hive officially withdrew its witness request for Lee Kyung-joon and instead named CLO Chief Legal Officer Jung Jin-soo. And on the same day, Min Hee-jin's lawyers at Sejong submitted their own documents, reaffirming their request for Min Hee-jin herself to undergo direct questioning as a party to the case. And this sets up a very different dynamic. Rather than Hive's CFO talk about balance sheets, we now have the company's chief legal strategist preparing to testify about governance, compliance, and probably shareholder agreements. And across from him will be Min Hee-jin herself, expected to explain her own actions and communications under oath. And the focus has moved from financial damage to the question of governance integrity, it seems like. So who exactly is CLO Jung Jin-soo, the man that Hive has chosen to put on the stand? So he started his career in the late 1990s at Kim & Jang, which is Korea's most powerful law firm, right at the height of the Asian financial crisis. And that was the era when inbound M&A deals exploded. Mergers and acquisitions. Companies were collapsing and global investors were circling Korea. And Jung Jin-soo cut his teeth on bankruptcies, due diligence, intellectual property, and even white-collar crime cases. And that experience gave him a taste of handling complex, high-stakes disputes. And after nearly 15 years at Kim & Jang law firm, he did something unusual. He left the law firm to become the first in-house lawyer at NCSoft, one of Korea's top game companies at the time, although since then the company kind of struggled. Now at NCSoft, he built the entire legal department from scratch. And what started as a company with no in-house lawyers became a fully professionalized legal team under Jung Jin-soo's leadership. But he didn't stop there. By 2015, he was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, COO, at NCSoft, where he oversaw not only legal matters, but also HR, PR, compliance, and government relations. He even stepped in as acting CFO at one point, and he managed finance and investor relations. So, in short, he wasn't just a lawyer. He was a full-fledged corporate manager who understood how organizations actually run. And in 2022, he made another big career move, and that is from games to entertainment or music. Hive created the role of chief legal officer for him, and he stepped into the company at a time when governance and global expansion were top priorities. And since then, he has overseen everything from compliance and risk management to global IP negotiations and billion-dollar acquisitions. And he's known inside Hive as the architect of his governance system. The man who pushed for board committees, compliance structures, and global standard risk controls. So in many ways, Jung Jin-soo represents the invisible framework that holds Hive together as a corporation, as it tries to operate like a world-class multinational company. And now, so why did Hive replace their CFO with Jung Jin-soo? I think their answer lies in courtroom tactics, because with CFO Lee Kyung-joon, Hive's case would have focused on finance, like losses, balance sheets, and ripple effects from Min Hee-jin's actions. But that approach carried a risk. Why? Because Lee Kyung-joon had already testified publicly during the SM Entertainment takeover fight, meaning Sejong could use cross-examination to drag Hive into, side debates about stock manipulation and market battles. So by turning to Jung Jin-soo, Hive could shift the spotlight away from financial disputes and toward governance, because Jung Jin-soo is the company's top legal strategist who is responsible for contracts, compliance, and shareholder agreements. So he can testify directly on the framework that Min Hee-jin is accused of undermining. And I guess some people say that it's a safer angle. Instead of debating numbers or speculative damages, Hive can argue that Min Hee-jin violated the rules of governance themselves. And by choosing Jung Jin-soo, Hive also neutralizes Sejong's gamble. And that is, if Min Hee-jin testifies in her own defense, she will be facing not a finance chief, but a lawyer manager like lawyer manager hybrid. That is Jung Jin-soo, who knows how to anchor the case in governance integrity. But I think the choice of Jung Jin-soo as a witness isn't just tactical, it's symbolic. Because since going public, Hive has tried to shed the image of a chaotic, idle agency and position itself as a governance-driven multinational company. And Jung Jin-soo has been central to that transformation. At NCSoft, he built legal and compliance systems from the ground up. And at Hive, he has chosen global IP rights, compliance protocols, and the governance frameworks that allow the company to manage multiple labels across continents. So by putting Mr. Jung on the stand, Hive is making a statement beyond this trial, like to the court, to investors, and to regulators. They're throwing a message that this isn't about personalities or even money. It's about defending the governance structures that make Hive a credible global player. And interestingly, Jung Jin-soo himself once said during an interview that he wanted to help build a Korean company that could run its overseas subsidiaries with the same authority as American multinationals. So this is from 2023 interview piece, and the interviewer asked a question: what is something you absolutely want to achieve in the future? Mr. Jung Jin-soo said, I want to contribute to the rise of a Korean company that truly succeeds on the global stage. When American companies run their Korean subsidiaries, the local employees follow directions very closely, partly because their reporting, management, and evaluation systems are so well established. But when Korean companies try to run subsidiaries in the US, American employees often don't take direction in the same way, and that really frustrates me. What I hope to see is a Korean company that can go global and command its overseas branches with the same authority that American firms do. I don't know if Hive will be that company, but I want to play a part in helping such a company come to life. Interesting. So for Hive, calling him as a witness signals exactly that ambition. This isn't just a legal fight with Min Hee-jin. It's a defense of Hive's identity as a global, governance-first corporation. Now, for Min Hee-jin, the witness switch could change the landscape dramatically, and for Sejong law firm as well, because her lawyers at Sejong have taken a risky step by asking that Min Hee-jin herself be questioned directly. And again, normally in civil cases, parties stay in the background while lawyers do the arguing and talking. And by putting Min Hee-jin forward, Sejong signaled that they believe silence is riskier than speaking. If she stays quiet, Hive's interpretation of her KakaoTalk messages and her dealings with investors could go unchallenged. If she speaks, though, at least she has a chance to frame her story in her own words. But now, across the courtroom, she won't be facing a finance officer, who's bound to spreadsheets. She'll be facing Hive's chief legal strategist, who has built his career around corporate governance and contract enforcement. And Jung Jin-soo won't be talking about financial damages. Instead, he'll be talking about duties and obligations and whether Min Hee-jin violated the very shareholder agreement that gave her power in the first place. And that sets up a high-stakes contrast. And Min Hee-jin will likely argue for creative independence, positioning herself as a visionary behind the new jeans who was squeezed out by corporate pressure. God knows what she'll be saying in court. But Jung Jin-soo will frame her actions as a governance breach and a structural disruption to the system that Hive built to run its labels. And the court won't just be weighing two versions of events. It will probably be choosing between two narratives, individual independence versus corporate governance. And that choice could determine not only Min Hee-jin's fate, but also how new jeans could fit into the larger Hive this courtroom drama system moving forward. Now, September 11th is shaping up to be one of the most important days in this entire dispute. In one courtroom, Hive will put forward Jung Jin-soo, its chief legal officer, there's a CFO, Jung Jin-soo, to defend its governance system. In the same case, Min Hee-jin herself could be called to testify, facing direct questions about her own actions and communications. And again, on that very same day, another courtroom will hear the new jeans mediation session. So the so-called daughters and the so-called mother both standing before the court. So we'll see how this goes. And again, I feel like, I don't know. We'll see. But here are some questions. Did Hive strengthen its case by switching to from CFO to CLO Jung Jin-soo? Or does this show that they left their financial argument was too, or they felt their financial argument was too vulnerable? And for Min Hee-jin, is testifying in person a sign of confidence, or is it a last resort gamble? And finally, with Hive framing this as a governance fight, and Min Hee-jin painting it as a struggle for, I don't know what she's gonna say, but which narrative will the court and the public ultimately accept? Let me know your thoughts as you write comments, and when you do so, let's stay positive, respectful, and classy. See you guys later. Peace and love. Bye-bye.